Hey there, welcome to another deep dive. So today we're going to be, we're diving into the world of birthdays.
Oh, always a fun topic.
And, this time it's personal for our listeners, right? Because we're diving into their birthday. You've provided us with an excerpt from, let me see, Adam's birthday book.
Okay.
And it focuses on January 6th. So that's what we're going to unpack today.
And that's good.
And, think of this as a blend of astrology, numerology, and maybe even a little self-discovery sprinkled in.
Exactly. It's not about, rigid predictions or anything. More like we're looking at potential strengths.
Yeah.
Like these recurring themes that are often associated with specific birth dates.
Right, like a roadmap instead of a railroad track.
I like that.
And speaking of roadmaps, the phrase that immediately jumps out from this book is, and get this, the day of substantiation. Ooh, intriguing.
Right. Now, I'm a sucker for a good mystery, so naturally I am hooked.
Of course.
What's the deal with this whole substantiation thing?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. Essentially, it points to, this core drive in those born on January 6th. They have this need to really understand the why behind things, the what. It's not enough to just accept things at face value.
So they're not just going to blindly follow the crowd.
Not really, no. They crave deeper meaning. They need proof. They need that solid ground to stand on.
Makes sense. Would you say then it's linked to a skeptical nature? Or maybe a really strong sense of justice?
I think probably both. There's a natural inclination towards critical thinking, questioning assumptions. It's not necessarily about being skeptical, but more about making sure that their beliefs, their actions are all founded on something substantial. Okay, so it's about integrity then, aligning their actions with what they know to be true.
Yeah, you could say that.
Now, the book also delves into spirituality, mentioning that even the most, materialistic January 6th individuals usually still believe in some sort of higher power.
Interesting.
So how does that fit in?
It's fascinating. See, this isn't necessarily about organized religion or anything like that, but more of an innate sense of wonder about the universe. Could be a belief in a universal force, the interconnectedness of things.
Right.
And I think it ties into that need for substantiation again. It's like they're searching for proof of something beyond just the physical.
So they're driven to understand the underlying fabric of existence, both what we can see and what we can't. I like that. And, speaking of understanding, there's this quote from the text that really stood out to me. Their interest in the world is not usually so technical as it is philosophical and poetic.
Oh, that's a good one.
It suggests a different way of seeing things, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Often they just have this unique ability to find something special, something extraordinary in the ordinary everyday things.
So it's not about being detached from reality, but more like they're infusing it with a different kind of meaning.
Exactly. Seeing the world through a more philosophical, even poetic lens, you could say.
Almost like they have this innate ability to zoom out and see the bigger picture, connect those dots that other people might miss.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But it's not all, deep thoughts and philosophical ponderings, is it? Because the book also highlights courage as a key trait for those born on January 6th. So how does that fit in with this whole philosopher, poet vibe we've got going on?
Well, I think that's where we see that duality coming in. They're described as being courageous, maybe even drawn to facing danger in some cases, which might seem at odds with this introspective nature we've been discussing. But
yeah, it's like, how do those two things go together?
right. But think about it. Their quest for truth, for substantiation, it often requires venturing into the unknown, challenging the status quo.
So it's about having the guts to stand up for what they believe in, even if it means, going against the grain. And it's interesting because the text also uses this phrase, and it seems almost paradoxical, radiating innocence, courage, and innocence. How do those two things coexist?
Right.
Yeah.
But it's not naivete, right? It's more like a purity of intention. They're not out to cause harm, but to shed light on things, to expose what they perceive as falsehoods. And again, this ties back to that concept of substantiation. They're not afraid to, shine a light on the darkness, challenge what they believe is wrong. They see it as their duty, even if it means facing some uncomfortable truths along the way.
That takes guts, for sure. But, too much of even a good thing can be, too much. So what about those potential downsides? Because the book definitely doesn't shy away from those either.
Oh, absolutely. Every coin has two sides. And for January 6th individuals that drive for substantiation, that constant need for proof, it can sometimes lead to overthinking, overanalyzing.
Right, because they're always searching for those answers.
Exactly. And the book actually, it cautions against seeing proof everywhere, attributing meaning where there might not be any.
So instead of finding some kind of peace in the unknown, they might get a little bit stuck, right?
Yeah.
Always searching, never finding that closure.
Yeah, it's like that whole paralysis by analysis thing. Have you heard that one?
Oh, for sure. A classic.
Right. And, this also kind of ties into another potential pitfall, which is this tendency to become, I don't know, maybe a little overly demanding of others.
Because they need to hash it out.
Right. That need for, deep discussion, for constant validation of their understanding. It can be, I guess, a lot for some people to handle.
Especially those who are maybe a little more, let's say, go with the flow.
Exactly. And it's not intentional on the part of the January 6th person. It's just that their minds are wired for that level of engagement.
That quest for deeper meaning.
Exactly. So it's about finding that balance.
That sweet spot between, connecting on a deep level, but also not overwhelming the people around them.
Right, right.
And speaking of deep connections, let's shift gears a bit here and talk about numerology for a second.
Okay, yeah.
So the book mentions the significance of the number 6, obviously, for those born on January 6th, and it ties that to Venus and Saturn. Now, I've got to say, I'm really intrigued by this cosmic combo. What's the story there?
It's an interesting one, for sure. In numerology, the number 6 is very often associated with harmony, balance, beauty, all those Venusian themes.
Okay.
But it's also about responsibility, service to others, which aligns more with Saturn's energy.
Oh, okay. So we've got love, discipline, beauty, structure. It's like all rolled into one.
That's a good way to put it. It can definitely make for a complex personality.
I bet. So let's break this down a little bit. Venus, as I'm sure many of our listeners know, is the planet of love, relationships, pleasure,
Right.
seeking that harmony and connection. But then you've got Saturn over here representing structure, discipline, maybe even a few limitations.
Yes, exactly. It's about setting those boundaries, taking responsibility for our actions.
Okay, so I'm picturing this cosmic dance, right? You've got Venus and Saturn up there just swirling around.
I love that visual.
How does that play out, would you say, in the life of someone born on January 6th?
Well, I think it creates this sort of constant push and pull.
Okay.
Well, on the one hand, you've got that very strong desire for love, for beauty, for connection. But on the other, there's this deep-seated need for structure, discipline, a sense of grounding.
So they're constantly striving for balance, indulging their Venusian desires, but also honoring those Saturnian responsibilities.
Exactly.
And you know what? That actually ties back beautifully to those potential pitfalls we were discussing earlier.
Oh, totally. It all comes together.
Right. For example, that tendency to maybe overthink things a little bit, that can be attributed to Saturn's influence.
Yes. And that need for constant validation, that can come from Saturn's desire for structure, for, wanting to know where they stand.
Interesting. So understanding these planetary influences, it can actually give January 6 folks some tools, right?
For sure.
To be more self-aware, to navigate some of those potential challenges. It's like having this cosmic cheat sheet.
Exactly. And speaking of cheat sheets, the book also mentions this tarot connection to the number 6, which is the Lover's card.
Oh, interesting.
And, this card, it's not just about romantic love, although it definitely encompasses that as well.
Right. Yep.
But it's more about, choice, unity, integration.
Bringing those different aspects of themselves together.
Yes.
Yeah.
And making choices that are in alignment with their values.
Which is, isn't that what this whole January 6th journey is about? It's about finding that balance between the Venusian and the Saturnian influences, learning to integrate all those different parts of themselves.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that you can be both the philosopher and the poet, the truth seeker and the compassionate soul.
I like that.
And it's this integration, this self-awareness that really allows these individuals to navigate the challenges, but also to really maximize that incredible potential that they have.
So it's not about picking one or the other. It's about saying yes to both, finding that harmony.
Yes, very well said.
And speaking of harmony, the book also dives into health advice specifically for January 6th birthdays. And you guessed it, it really emphasizes self-care.
Of course, it's so important.
It is. Now, why is it so important for these folks?
Well, the book actually cautions against, get this, worshipful and self-sacrificing tendencies.
Oh, wow.
Right. So it really highlights how crucial it is for them to, set boundaries, prioritize their own well-being. Because they might have this tendency to overextend themselves, always putting others' needs before their own.
Which makes sense given everything we've talked about, right? They're compassionate, they want to help other people see the light.
Right.
But you know what they say, you can't pour from an empty cup.
So true.
So how can those January 6th listeners out there make sure they're taking care of themselves while still showing up for the people they care about?
Well, the book actually suggests finding enjoyment in simple pleasures. Those little things that bring you joy, that help you relax. And it also really stresses the importance of setting those boundaries, learning to say no when you need to.
That can be tough.
Oh, for sure, especially for these individuals, given how much they, want to please others. But it's crucial for maintaining that balance and preventing burnout.
So it's about recognizing your own limits, understanding that self-care is not selfish, it's essential.
100%.
And there's this one piece of advice in this book that I absolutely love. It says, serve only that which merits your service.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's powerful, right?
It is. It speaks to the importance of discernment, of being mindful of where you're directing your energy. January 6th individuals, they have so much to offer the world, but it's crucial to make sure that their efforts are valued, appreciated.
It's about choosing your battles wisely.
Yes, exactly.
Investing your time and energy in those people and pursuits that really, truly resonate with your values. Now, we've covered a lot of ground here today. I mean, we've gone from like these deep-seated desires for truth all the way to, the cosmic dance of Venus and Saturn. So if we had to distill it all down, right? For our January 6th listeners out there, what would you say is the one key takeaway from all of this?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Mm.
I think, if I had to pick just one, it would be this. Embrace that duality.
Mm-hmm.
That philosopher-poet combo, the truth seeker is also this compassionate soul. Those parts of yourself that might seem like they're at odds.
Yeah, those contradictions.
Right. Those are your strengths.
It's like they each have a piece of the puzzle, right?
Yes.
And when you put them together, that's when things get really interesting.
Exactly. It's in that integration of that self-awareness that you really step into your power.
Now, there's one last little nugget from Adam's birthday book that I wanted to touch on before we wrap things up. It talks about January 6th individuals retaining this, get this, childlike sense of wonder.
Oh, I love that.
Right. It reminds me of that Einstein quote. The important thing is not to stop questioning.
Yes.
Curiosity has its own reason for existing.
It's so true. That innate curiosity, that openness to new experiences, it's something really special.
It's like a superpower, honestly. It's like having this, secret weapon against boredom, against the mundane. It's a way to keep life interesting, wouldn't you say?
100%. And, when you combine that childlike wonder with that January 6th, drive for substantiation, for proof.
Ooh, what happens then?
It's like you've got this recipe for a life of, continuous learning and exploration.
I love that. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into January 6th, for all those January 6th babies out there, or maybe you know one, I want to leave you with this thought.
Yeah.
What sparks that sense of wonder in you? What are those mysteries that you're still drawn to? What don't you know that you're just dying to find out?
And what knowledge are you seeking to, substantiate?
Exactly. Hold on to that curiosity, that thirst for understanding. See where it leads you.
You never know what you might find.
Because who knows? The answers you're looking for, they could be right around the corner just waiting for you to discover them. Until next time, keep exploring.